This is the PlayStation 2, one of the best gaming consoles to ever exist. Released in the year 2000 at a time when most household televisions were CRT TVs. But during its long lifespan, we would see the rise of high-definition televisions, and wouldn't you know it, some games were able to take advantage of this. Now what I have here is Gran Turismo 4 for the PlayStation 2, and word on the street is that this has high-definition compatibility, being capable of outputting a 1080i image signal. So the question we have here is, does this work? How were those other games taking advantage of high-definition televisions? And is the PS2 really capable of HD? Let's dive in and find out. To ask if the PlayStation 2 is capable of high definition, we first need to understand what resolution majority of the PlayStation 2 games outputted at. As I mentioned, at the time of the PlayStation 2 release, majority of households were using CRT TVs. CRT being abbreviated for cathode ray tube televisions. These TVs offered a resolution of 480i. This was the norm back then, with TV square shape utilizing an aspect ratio of 4:3. Of course, we had plasma TVs and some higher-end CRTVs coming into the market that offered more resolution, but bear with me. Because majority of households were only getting an output of 480i with an aspect ratio of 4:3, the PlayStation 2 console was developed with that in mind, and in turn, majority of the games were developed with that resolution output. Of course, like all things in the gaming landscape, there were exceptions, but we'll get to that. So we have our baseline. The games were matching resolution output of the major market. Makes sense. But then those plasmas and higher-end high-definition televisions began to take hold of the market. Somewhere between 2003 and 2006, the tides began to shift. And this is why we would see the next PlayStation go all in on high definition. But till then, what was Sony going to do to appease these new consumers who want to get the best out of their shiny new displays? This is almost comparable to that moment when we saw the rise in 4K televisions during the PlayStation 4 era. You remember that? Sony went ahead and released a Pro console, had more GPU power allowing for checkerboard rendering to output the same game at a higher resolution. But I guess this is only comparable really in the consumer market shift, maybe not Sony's console approach, because clearly we don't have a PlayStation 2 professional, do we? So how is the PlayStation 2 able to output at a higher resolution without that bump in GPU or CPU power? This is where it gets really interesting. You see, with the CRT TVs, majority of video signals were using a technique known as interlaced video. Essentially, the video signal would divide the image's frames into two sections, one with odd lines and the other with even lines flashing quickly back and forth. These would come together to create a full image. You can almost think of it like window blinds opening and closing really fast. This method was tailored to the CRT TV and it did look decent enough. It certainly had some benefits for its time, allowing for smoother video with less flicker and improved motion. Playing your PlayStation 2 games would ultimately be displayed using this interlaced signal, usually keeping it at around that 480i resolution. Now, this is where we get into the cool features that these newer displays were capable of. Before I get into that though, I've been referencing resolutions like 480i and 1080i, right? But let's say we're looking at modern resolutions for video games. You'll see resolutions like 1080p and 2160p. Have you ever wondered what the I or P stands for? Well, that I stands for interlaced, as we've already covered, and the P stands for progressive scan. You see, using progressive scan, the PlayStation 2 was able to take advantage and output at a higher resolution using specific cables, developer intervention, and of course, a compatible display. So what is progressive scan? This was an alternative video output method that went away with that two-section scans of interlaced and would display the entire image as a whole picture at once. No more quick flashing back and forth. Now, I know this doesn't sound like a big deal, but this video method allowed for a sharper and cleaner image using those newer displays. PlayStation 2 using progressive scan didn't become a thing until later in the generation, and it required some special cables known as component cables. These allowed for a higher bandwidth of output information, resulting in, once again, that cleaner image, and also, as a bonus, you got vibrant, beautiful colors. Games that were allowing progressive scan would be the likes of Jak 2, Jak 3, God of War 2, Black, and many, many more. This allowed games to look a little bit better on your display, simply by changing how the picture was outputted to the display. It's pretty interesting stuff. And this finally brings us to our big game, Gran Turismo 4. I have it right here, and this game is boasting 1080i support. We see it ends with I, so that would be an interlaced signal, but running at an overall higher resolution of 1920 by 1080. So this is high definition, right? Well, in reality, it's not that simple. You see, I booted up Gran Turismo 4 here and switched it onto the HD TV video output, as it's referred in-game, and during the race I was surprised by what I saw. It was probably the best looking PS2 game I have ever seen running on the hardware, but at the same time I thought to myself, this is not high definition, at least not as we know it today. After some digging, you'll learn Gran Turismo 4 is rendering at a lower resolution, something like 960 by 540. The image is then stretched out to fill in and achieve that ever sought after 1920 by 1080 rating. So while technically high definition, the image is much softer and jaggier than, let's say, a native 1080p image. But let's be real, we can only expect so much. I mean, this is running on a PlayStation 2 after all. Now, comparing to the 480p progressive scan mode that is also available from the in-game menu, I think this leads to a subjective experience. While some may find the sharper jaggies of the 1080i not as appealing to the eye, so they may prefer the 480p progressive mode. In my comparisons and my opinion, I find it pretty amazing seeing how good the game looks in 1080i. The image retains more detail in faraway objects, leading to an overall cleaner presentation. Honestly, I was just so blown away with how good this game looks on a PlayStation 2. It had good detail, solid frame rate. They clearly used every ounce of the PlayStation 2's power for this game. So I guess we can answer the big question. Is the PlayStation 2 capable of high definition? Technically, kind of, yeah. But it's not through standard means. It certainly appears to resemble more of a 480 image to my eye, more so than, let's say, standard high definition. But that is not to take away the fact that this game graphically pushed the PlayStation 2 to its absolute limits, and it was accepting the latest display technologies. If I'm being honest, it really does feel like this is playing on a PlayStation 2 Pro. It's great, and it holds up incredibly well today. It was fun seeing how developers were able to get that better picture quality using the display's technology. Playing these games with progressive scan cleans up the image, and with select games even offering widescreen support, that being 16 by 9, you would be absolutely amazed at how well a lot of these PlayStation 2 games hold up. And now I want to know, are any of you still playing PlayStation 2 games? What is your experience using progressive scan for specific games? And how about Gran Turismo 4, hey? Let's chat about this amazing console and the game down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and of course, happy gaming.